Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody who's here. We went ahead and got started. And if you are just joining us because you're watching this on replay, we just literally just got started. And we're making this a little bit of a mini workshop too, so that a little bit more interactive. What we'd like you to start off with, the first step is to pick a person in your life, at home, a person in your personal life or at work, and really just take 20 seconds to write down why they're challenging. And we ask you to please just let it all out without a filter. And this is your timer, so go.
I love it. I was playing the Jeopardy song in the back of my head when I was looking at it.
So one person and why they are challenging. Tell us why. Thought I would be able to see the chat, but I don't actually see it in presenter mode. So if you do have someone in mind, I would ask you to share it, but I won't be able to see it for now. Oh wait, I can actually, the chat.
Oh, awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, I can too. Yeah.
Okay, I do see it. I do see some people putting some posts in. So thank you for that. We will go ahead and use some of your examples later on. So if you can type in the person, you can just simply say my boss or my partner or a colleague or whoever it is. Just think about that person and you can either share it with us and we will potentially use yours as an example going forward. So defining a challenging person, what does that mean to you? A lot of the things that we think about with a challenging person, it causes us stress, right? So there's a lot of anxiety, perhaps stress, the things that they say, the things they do. You know, we can come up with a lot of reasons. Whatever you wrote down, that is perfect. And I think the kind of foundation that kind of unifies probably everybody here when you're talking about what they should, you know, the kind of unifying principle is that you believe they should be doing, saying, or behaving in a different way. And this is really the foundation to kind of why we think they're challenging, because they're not doing what they should be doing. And so the bad news is that we can't control the world for them. And, you know, this is the bad news mostly because it would be easier, right? If I could wave a magic wand and have that person be who I think they should be, I would get to feel a lot less stress, right? Because I would be thinking, you're doing a good job. You're being the person I think, you know, is right or has integrity. I'm seeing some feelings in the chat right now, some integrity, perhaps some competition, some communication skills, some of those things have been popping up. And so unfortunately, we can't control them. So that's the bad news. And really, honestly, if you're really honest with yourself and kind of this principle is that to think that we can is really arguing with reality, right? So that's really at the bottom of it, the fact that we can't control them and we think that they should be acting differently is arguing with reality. So step 2, how do you feel? So when I ask you how you feel, I think some, you know, might go to mad or to angry, some you know, common feeling words. So when you think about them, why they're challenging, how do you feel, right?
I like the image of the pulling the hair. It's just.
But if you were to really dig down deeper, the mad feeling or the angry feeling can be really kind of nuanced, right? You can feel exasperated or distrustful or guarded, infuriated or spiteful. So these are all just slightly nuanced feelings, and it's important mostly because for each of those feelings, there are slightly different ways we show up in the world, depending on what specifically we're talking about. And so we added down here that there is an expanded list of feelings available on our website. We have pages of them, in fact, and this has been really helpful for me in order to really get down to the core of what's going on with me, is really naming it. Brianne, you mentioned that there was also study showing that when you actually put a word to it, mention it, call it out.
Yeah, so being as specific as you can with naming whatever the feeling is that you're feeling. So if it's mad that's coming to mind, you might just dig a little deeper in the list into other words that also could fall in that category. Or I feel like the one that comes up for me all the time is I'm like, oh, I just feel anxious or anxiety, but there's actually a ton of words that actually kind of show all the gradations of anxiety. And I felt that was really helpful for me to sort of pin down which type of anxiety or why I was feeling it, and then to kind of do more of the work to get to the bottom of things, which is really helpful. Okay, so the good news, there's always good news, right? So the good news is that even if we don't have the power to control the world or other people, we do have the power to control ourselves. And then the reality is that we do and we can control our thoughts. They're ours to do with as we please. And so then we can move on and say, okay, and our thoughts create our feelings. And this one is so interesting because it's actually, I would say, one of the most powerful sentences that I have learned in the last year. But it's also so simple that sometimes I can imagine how it could just like go in one ear and out the other and just sort of be like another one of those sentences that is said. But what we really wanted to highlight here, and if you did attend any of our previous webinars, we have also kind of gone over it there, but we're going to discuss it as an example here. So when we say our thoughts create our feelings, we can think about an example where, let's say you have a loved one, someone you know and care about who lives very far away. And I know now with technology, we're all very connected, but let's imagine that, you know, they're far away, you don't see them very often, you actually don't communicate very often. And let's just say they, you know, got into an accident or a car accident, something like that, where they, you know, they're hurt, and you know, it's not good news, right? So that happens, and it's on the other side of the world. And let's just say it takes a day or two for you to get the message or the phone call or the information from the other side of the world that this event has happened. And so, you know, you look at your phone and you see the message come through, and you immediately have some thoughts, and it feels like you immediately have feelings, right? You immediately have anxiety, worry, sadness, discomfort. I mean, it could be all kinds of different feelings. But really, the essence of this is that you don't actually have those feelings until you have a thought about the message that you've gotten. It's not actually the fact that that person has gotten in an accident that created those feelings, because prior to finding out in your phone message, you probably were going about your day and you hadn't felt that sadness yet. And I just thought that this example it might be kind of extreme in a way, but it's also really helpful to sort of piece apart and highlight how we have to think about something in order to trigger some of those feelings like anxiety or sadness. And so from that, we can actually ultimately say that we also control our feelings. So if our thoughts are linked to our feelings and we control our thoughts, we also control our feelings. So that is good news. You actually have a lot of power. And so then, okay, why does that matter? Why does this matter? So we actually, I would say in large part, if not almost all the time, do things in life in order to feel a certain way. We're motivated by our feelings. And a lot of times they're feelings like, you know, want to feel a little bit more peaceful or a lot more peaceful. You want to feel peaceful, you know, you want to feel success or accomplishment. And I'm kind of highlighting these nice photos in here. You want to feel maybe more jubilant or joyful or happy, or you want to feel more connected to your loved ones or to new people. All of those types of feelings actually drive most of what we do if we kind of piece apart, you know, why are we doing whatever we're doing in life.
100%. Yeah, no, and I think we don't necessarily talk about this a lot, but that really is kind of the fundamental thing that we do here. So the next step number 3, is for you to go back to what you wrote in step number 1. And this is where we interpret data. So I'm a scientist. deal with data a lot, right? We have our spin on data. So if we were to take the data we accumulate in experiments, et cetera, we integrate it and we write a discussion and we have our spin on it. We try to convince the world of our point of view, right? And so really what you're doing with this person, this challenging individual, is taking data, right? And we're interpreting it and we're putting it through the lens of how we see the world, right? But the question really is, would everyone in the world agree with you? So does everyone in the world find this person annoying or maybe out of integrity or, going down the list? I think I also saw one about a boss, somebody who isn't supportive. That was another example that ended up in our chat. So would everyone agree that this person isn't supportive? So I think that is the first step that I like to take when dealing with somebody who I'm noticing is causing me some sort of grief or frustration or anger, really asking myself, where's my spin on the story and what is the real data? And again, just thinking about, would everyone agree with you? What would everyone agree on? So if they don't all agree with you, what can we say are the facts of the situation? So an example of the boss someone wrote in, that would be, this person is a professor at this university or has this research lab, is running this program. Everyone would agree on that. And so we start with that. That is really where we kind of strip away the story that we're creating, the spin on the data, and then we kind of just look at the facts. That would be step 3. Those are the facts. And then based on that, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so from here, you can look at the facts, right? You've kind of tried to strip away the details and just get down to the nitty gritty facts that everybody would agree on. And that can be hard. I just will admit, the first times I was trying to do that, I had to try multiple times to really get it to just the facts, and that's why coaching actually is so helpful, because you actually have somebody being like, wait, is that just a fact? And you can be, oh, wait, no. Okay, so what are some other interpretations? So based on the facts, if you try to strip away the story and just get to the facts, are there other possibilities or ways of thinking of this person based on the facts? So we kind of did the exercise of pick a person, write down why you think they are challenging. So in this part, we're sort of asking, can you write down anything that could be a different interpretation of that person? And that's, I know it's kind of tough because you are enmeshed in your relationship with them, right? So you're thinking about them and the way you're thinking about them, but just try to open up your mind and just think, is there a way someone else would think about this person? Just a different example. Doesn't have to be right or wrong. You don't have to agree with it. Just 2 other possibilities to kind of think about.
Yeah, so go ahead and write those down. They can be actually kind of similar to the first one in some ways, but just a step or 2 away from it. So this is where I think, we introduce also the ladder thoughts. So Bree, what would be one?
Yeah, so
say if we were to take the example someone put in of the boss that is not supportive. Right. And my thought about, maybe somebody's thought about this person is that they're just not supporting my career.
Yeah. Okay. So a boss who's not very supportive of my career. So let's see. So one other alternative, I guess, thought could be like, what if they're doing their best? Whatever it is they're doing, it's their best. They're trying. Maybe they're not meeting the expectations, but they're trying their best. I guess that could be one.
Definitely one. Of course, for me, what that kind of brings up is I don't really believe that thought at all, right? So this has to, again, go back to like what resonates with you. So when you said they're trying their best, and I'm just going to tell our audience here that Brianne is probably one of the most positive people I've ever met. So I personally learned so much from her, just from like observing how she thinks about the world is very, very optimistic and positive. But for some of us, it might be a leap to get to they're just doing their best, right? And so another possibility, giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? That would be in an ideal world. So another possibility is perhaps this person doesn't need to be everything for me, is one that I kind of like to use, especially when we're talking about expectations for somebody that's perhaps a boss or a partner. Perhaps my partner doesn't have to also be my housekeeper. You know, I think some people might think a partner should be doing dishes or the partner should be doing laundry. Perhaps that's not, you know, we can always make requests, but some thoughts that bring me peace, perhaps that he is not or she is not the person that's also going to fill that role. And as far as a boss goes, I definitely have had a few that weren't my favorite. And the thought that brought me some peace was this person was never meant to support me in that way. And so that's just a couple of other possibilities. I would love to get to believe the thought that they're just doing their best. And I think that's where the ladder comes in, right? We start with one small step, and that you might notice feels just a bit better than they're the worst, I can't stand them. They're, you know, so it's like moving up the ladder with these thoughts.
So it could be like, maybe he's or she's trying her best. Maybe.
Maybe it's a good one.
Some little tweak there. So. Okay, so ultimately, kind of piecing this all together, you know, what is it costing you to having these, or what are the thought patterns about this challenging person costing you? I know, kind of mushed that sentence, but you know, what do your thought patterns about challenging people cost you ultimately? So there's a lot of different ways you could expound on what it's costing you, and this is just sort of one piece that we decided to focus on. So I wanted to highlight again that only you actually feel the feeling. So if you're feeling happy, you feel happy. And it is true that there's probably some amount of community sense of, you know, if you look at someone and they're happy, you might also think something that makes you feel happy. But they don't in and of themselves make you feel happy. So then kind of taking that and going backwards a little bit, you know, if you're feeling a feeling, maybe it's a negative feeling, you're the only one feeling that feeling. So kind of just to drive it home, the other person doesn't actually feel the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, the annoyance, the frustration, the rejection. They don't actually feel any of those things, even though you're feeling them. And so again, if you're the only one feeling a feeling, you can kind of conceive of the possibility that you might want to have a different feeling. And so I guess I wanted to just pose the question, right? So if you could choose to feel more joy or love or happiness, let's say more of the time, not all the time necessarily, but more of the time, you know, would you make that choice? Maybe many people would say yes, maybe not, but probably a lot of people would say yes. So now we just wanted to kind of highlight this concept that our feelings actually fuel our actions or inactions in the world. So they fuel what we do or don't do. And it's kind of tied to what we mentioned before about everything we do is linked to how we want to feel. So it's kind of both a forward and backward in that sense. So this is just a couple more questions to start to get us to really think about all these concepts in terms of challenging people or challenging relationships. So if you go back to step 2 about your feelings, what do you do when you feel the feelings that you wrote down in step 2? So you've identified your person, you've identified why you think they're challenging, and then you wrote down some feelings that you have around that person. So what actions or inactions do you take when you feel those feelings that you wrote down?
So
It's just
maybe
a helpful exercise to draw it out.
yeah. So for example, for the example we've been kind of working with the boss who perhaps our thought is he doesn't support my career, and perhaps the feeling could be frustration, resentment, maybe. Resentment might resonate a little bit more with me when I think about a certain person. And so feeling the feeling of resentment obviously doesn't feel awesome. And some of the things that I explored for myself, what I do is look for more reasons why they're not supporting me. I focus, and it's like that confirmation bias, right? You look for what's wrong and you will find what's wrong. Your brain loves to find evidence for the thought it's thinking being true. And so that's one thing I do. I would do from a place of resentment, find more and more evidence for why that thought that I'm choosing to think is true. The things I'm not doing are considering, what they are doing, right? So, for every story, there is the opposite, right? There's the kind of other part of it that we're not sharing. So every story has two sides, right? And that's why we have arguments, because everyone sees things slightly differently. And so I think when you're thinking about the things you do and you don't do, it's really helpful for us to just recognize and acknowledge and own up to the fact that we actually are creating more like of that thought. We actually, like, our result in our life is giving us more of that, more of the thing that's causing us frustration. We're creating more of it for ourselves. So it's a pretty powerful and sometimes disheartening thing to sometimes realize. And so I think part of this work is also, just recognizing that this is just what our brains do from a place of curiosity and thinking about, what is this creating our lives?
It's totally a normal part of being human to have these thoughts. Okay, and then this just again is kind of further probing questions into that concept. So what might different feelings, other feelings, motivate you to do or to not do? So maybe Ursula, like in your example, maybe you could share, like, did you come up with any other feelings and then think about things that would help you do or not do in terms of like the resentment example?
Yeah.
More evidence. Yeah.
So as far as resentment, I would probably also just ruminate a lot of my mind. And ruminating just looks like running around, further kind of telling myself how awful this person is, how they should be acting differently. And that thought process actually takes up energy. So I'm actually also depleting myself of my own mental energy that I could be using for something else. So that peace that we're like looking for, we do yoga, we meditate, do all these like retreats, we go on all these fun activities to sort of, we're kind of chasing the feeling, right? We want to feel happy, we want to feel peace. And what I'm doing for myself when I think and I feel resentment really is the opposite of that. So I'm depleting my energy, I'm depleting my peace. I'm kind of doing that just by thinking about it, by being in my head about it. And then the things that I'm not doing, of course, are focusing on the rest of my life. If anything, I'm giving away my thought and my energy and my life to somebody who perhaps I don't necessarily want to be friends with, who's not in my inner circle. And so I also think about that of like, why am I giving away my power to that person? Why am I allowing for them to spend so much time in my mind when a lot of times they're not even considering me,
They don't even know.
They don't even know. So I think that's just so ironic in a lot of ways how, the challenging people in our lives, they have their own thoughts about us. And most of the time we are like not even present in their thought patterns. So we're literally just creating all of this for us in our body.
Right. So, like, do we want to do that? I guess might be the next question. But, what we really want to highlight here is that, like Ursula said, you already mentioned it. It's all about just taking your power back, as we kind of referred to before, right? your power is, that you can control yourself, and you can control your thoughts, and therefore you can control your feelings, right? So we kind of just wanted to close with some thoughts about this. Lots of thoughts. Ultimately, if you're waiting for someone to act the way you think they should be acting, right? In order for you to feel either at peace or happy, or you can start to insert any positive feelings there that you might be searching for or seeking, you may be waiting a very long time, because they can do what they want to do, and we're speaking of adults, right? Adults in your life can choose to be and do what they want. But the good news is that's why we're here. We're here to help. We've gone through a lot of this ourselves. That's why we're here. That's this whole process has helped us immensely, and that's why we're trying to put this together so we can share with others as much as possible.
Yes, 100%. I kind of love this last one because, this giving your power away is a powerful one. Once I heard somebody tell me, like, so you're waiting for them to do the thing that you want them to do, but you can't control so that you can feel a certain way. That's really disempowering. Why would you do that? And I thought to myself, yeah, why would I do that? That sounds ridiculous. We have all these, we didn't get into it in this particular one, but we have all these manuals for people, instruction manuals, right? Like, this is the manual how I think you should live your life. And when you don't do that, I get to think about the things that I think you should be doing, which is frustrating me, which is leading me to suffer, right? And so I think that's ultimately what it is. We're not asking you to cover up thoughts with pretty thoughts, but it's ultimately, are you actually creating a life that you want to live, not at the effect of others, not at the effect of the world,
right,
but because you intentionally want to think that way, to feel that way, to take actions from that, and not because somebody else is acting a certain way. Because, like Brianne said, we're all adults here, and adults will do what they want to do at the end of the day. So.
Or well, it gets a little more complicated when you get into like parenting and children.
Yes, parenting and children is another topic of discussion.
But thank you for clarifying that we're not just putting pretty thoughts on things. That was another good point to clarify there.
Yeah, so that we did say it was going to be a half an hour of the lecture part of it. So we wanted to just keep to our time here and just ask if there were any questions that came up. We're happy to answer them. And also to share that, we are going to be spending a few minutes on the actual coaching program that we're going to be starting up here very soon. So if you're interested in hearing more about it, please stay on, and otherwise feel free to go ahead and log off, because the challenging people part of it is done. Awesome. Yeah. Great. So good. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, perfect.